Welcome to Confessions of a Cleaning Business Owner. Today we're going to be answering the question, why am I still cleaning? And this is really, really common within the cleaning industry. You might have a team, a fair sized team, and you're wondering why you are still cleaning. You might even have planned it so you're not cleaning and somehow you're still cleaning. What's going on, Diane? Why are so many people finding this?
I think it's a really difficult one, actually, because sometimes, things happen in our business and we jump back in. Sometimes we need to carry on cleaning for the income. But sometimes it's because we don't actually even plan our day as business owners. We kind of winging it so much that we're almost like, okay, we sort the team out in the morning. Now what am I going to do? There's this distraction to look at. There's this distraction to look at. There's social media to have a nosy at. There's this to do. There's this task that I probably don't need to do it, but I'm going to do it because I like doing it and it helps me avoid doing something else. And I just think there's no structure to our day sometimes. We've got to the stage where we're off the tools most of the time, but then we don't know how to structure and plan what we actually are meant to be doing on a daily basis.
There's a lot of people that are desperate to find that level of boredom and unstructuredness because they are literally still cleaning 10 hours a day.
Well, I think that's a different problem to the disorganization, is that if you're still cleaning for 10 hours a day, then it might be that you need to keep cleaning because you need the income. But if you're doing it because you're putting off the next level in your business, that's a different thing, isn't it?
So what I hear, one of the reasons I hear is I plan to be off, but someone goes off sick or something happens or a clean overruns or all of these things that drag people to deal with it there and then. And that's why they're struggling they plan to not be cleaning 2 days a week. Let's say they've planned to not clean and they still find themselves cleaning every day. And so they never have the time to do the working on the business to improve.
They spend their days firefighting, really, don't they? They're kind of like, okay, I've got a problem, I need to fix it, I need to fix it. Sometimes there's a decision point, and I know there was for me in my business where I was still cleaning, and the business was at a point where I didn't technically need to clean for financial reasons, but I was still going out cleaning pretty much every day because that was the go-to. That was always the solution. If somebody phoned in sick, guess what was going to happen? Diane was going to go out and do their shift, rather than actually, because it was sometimes the easiest solution. It felt like the easiest solution. Well, I'll just do it. But actually, long term, that's not the best solution for the business. And I literally had to come to a point where I was like, I am no longer an option. So if you're still out cleaning, but technically financially you don't need to be, maybe you've got to that point where you're no longer an option and you need to find other solutions.
Do you know something else I talk about to people? So I hate talking about this because it's always a little bit negative. Sickness rates. Okay. We kind of know that we're running at about 10% sickness rates. Now that is horrific. And by that, I mean holidays, sickness, absences, appointments, like the whole load of things. So about a 10% absence rate, which is high for any industry. But I think given the kind of people we're working with, a lot of them may have a lot of dependents. We accept that that's where it is. It's probably about stable. So if I know I'm running at a 10% absence rate and I've got 10 staff, right, that's one off every single day on average. Now, they won't do it like that. No, we'll have 3 off one day and 1 off a different day. But anyway, let's say on average, it's 1 per day. Then I need an extra member of staff just to cover that absence. Otherwise, it's me.
Or we do, and we've talked about this before, we only book at 90%. So we only actually use our capacity up to 90%. And therefore, when somebody is off, which they always are, like you say, if 10 staff, you could probably expect to have at least 1 off every day. Well, then you don't need to then automatically jump in, because at 10 staff, you are at the stage where you have probably replaced your income from cleaning. So your job now is the business owner. So you shouldn't need to be the first port of call if you accept those numbers, that actually at any point 10% of your team will not be in to clean. Only book at 90%, or you have 11 staff because you know that you need 11 in order to have 10 available.
So we book at 90%. I wouldn't actually have extra staff and think, oh, you're just extra. It's book at 90%. And I'll tell you why I only book at 90%. Because let's say you get it wrong and you think, oh, I haven't got enough work for my staff. If you say to those staff, well, do you know what? You can go home 45 minutes early. All of you can go home 45 minutes early. Do you know how many complaints you get? Zero complaints. And what you'll find is when one or two people go off and you say, well, will you work an extra 45 minutes? Well, yes, I'm happy to do that. Whereas when you're asking every day, oh, can you do an extra hour? Or can you do this? It's just no every time.
Wear thin as well, doesn't it? So there's only so long that they will go, yeah, you've added another client on. I thought I was finishing at 2 and now I'm finishing at 3. There's only so many times you can do that before you've taken more than you've earned in terms of goodwill from your team. So yeah, only booking them at 90% means that a lot of the time you won't have to do that. You'll be, like you say, if you're at the stage where you are at 10 staff, and we're only talking that as a random number because it's a nice easy number to talk about, but if you are at that stage, then you can spread out that one person that's always missing. You can either spread that out between the team, or you don't need them in the first place because everybody had sort of slightly shorter hours. And most of our team will do 4.5 to 5 hours of actual cleaning a day, but we only ever book them out at maximum of 4.
Yeah.
And that gives us that leeway in the schedule.
What it allows for is overruns or anything, because with the best will in the world, and I do say 80% of problems can be eradicated at quote stage, we all still make mistakes, don't we? As my team have pointed out to me last week, Louise, you made mistakes. And I was like, all right, fine. Yes, I've been very much told, get back out there and do them in person until you get them spot on again. Because apparently I've spent too long off the tools. And I was like, right, all right then. So I've done 2 in-person quotes this week.
Back into sales appointments in the house.
Well, I've been doing them online, but yes, they've told me that, Louise, you can't see the level of dirt online, and we're very upset with you because they've overrun by 1 to 2 hours. To which my argument is, I don't really care, because if you look at the time it saves me by not traveling to all these quotes, actually an overrun by 1 to 2, it's like we're making decisions based on numbers. Actually, it's better for me. But apparently it's not better for them. So
and that's the thing, isn't it? It's always that balance when you're doing anything in your business. As this is good for you, Louise,
really
but
good.
actually the impact on your team and your quality manager has been a lot higher than the impact would have been on you if you'd have got the quote right in the first place. So it is always a bit of a balance, isn't it? And we do most of our quoting over the phone. We don't even have the video, but sometimes we go out and quote because there's just something on that phone call that I need to see this rather than try and quote blind. Yeah, it's always that balance, isn't it, between not peeing your team off and making too big mistakes, but also being prepared to adjust it if necessary. Most of our team are accepting that it's a first clean, we've booked extra time, but so long as we communicate really well with them, then they're quite forgiving if it's not quite right. And they also know where the boundaries are, and we just go start at the top of the list and work your way down, and when you run out of time, you stop. Simple as that.
And this is where, again, I think that are you still cleaning? It comes on to how are you planning your day? So I know that most of my complaints, we don't get a lot, but most of them come from first time cleans. Either this wasn't what I was expecting, or oh, they didn't have time to do my basement. No, they didn't. It's little things like that. So I plan in that every single first time clean, I'm there in the last half an hour at some point. It's not always me, I'll be honest. It is often not me most of the time, but someone will be there. One of my managers will be there. And what that will do is they'll talk to the customer there and then. They'll discuss it. The customer doesn't have to get irate writing an email to us to tell us what we already knew anyway. And all problems are resolved before they kind of escalate. What you find is if you don't plan that in and you don't have time to do it, it escalates. They've got angry, they've written an email, you've then got to reply to the email, you've probably got to go back and fix it. Whereas you deal with it in a house, you say, look, this isn't getting done, I'll add it onto the next one. This is how we're going to deal with it. It becomes a lot easier to deal with. And I think a lot of this is why I'm still cleaning is you're not sort of planning to head off those problems. So you're being quite reactive. There's a problem, you've now got to go and deal with it. And now your overfilled schedule has now become just a little bit fuller because you've now got to fix a complaint. And now you're angry with your staff.
Busy day, planned or not, you already had a busy day, and then a complaint comes in and you've now got to go out for an hour and fix that problem. Whereas actually, if you'd have managed that in advance, i.e., you've got a new customer, we're always nervous about new customers too, whether it's a one-off clean or a regular client, is we know that there's a lot that can go wrong on that first appointment, either whether we've got the quote wrong or whether the client hasn't told us everything or whether they've tried to add things and the team have been trying to be accommodating, because our team are lovely and they do try and be accommodating. So heading that off at the pass, basically trying to stop it before it happens, is key. That's going to be 10 minutes of your time rather than the hour that you're now going to have to clean the next day that wasn't planned in your diary. If you could plan that, think, well, okay, I've got a brand new customer tomorrow, so I need to make sure I'm there half an hour, 15 minutes before the end to cover those sorts of things and make sure it's all either been done to a really good standard, or you've communicated with the client that they couldn't finish because.
And it reduces your stress levels, customer stress levels, staff stress levels, everyone's stress levels, but it's heading it off. And the other thing that I think a lot of cleaning company owners are guilty with, and I know everyone listening to this will go, I don't do that, I don't do that, but you've all done this. So I plan everything in my diary, okay? And sometimes diary clashes happen. So either I've got to deal with an unexpected complaint, or I've had staff call off sick, so I can't go to a quote because I know I have to go and deliver a clean that's already booked in. And then it's oh gosh, I've now got to tell them. And you know it's going to clash in 2 days' time, right? And you think, oh, I'll tell them, I'll tell them. And then it gets to like, normally for me, it's the morning of, and you're like, oh, I've just got to tell them, haven't I? But do you know how many customers are feeding back that they are not being told that their clean isn't going to happen, or that the quote was cancelled, or someone just didn't turn up? And so I know, because we're hearing it consistently from customers, that cleaners are not communicating that they're not turning up. Now, I don't think us as business owners have a massive problem with communication. It's just that I think we feel so awkward telling them that we are not going to achieve their expectations, that a lot of people avoid it, which then, of course, causes a whole load of knock-on problems, because then all the work you've put into getting that client, if you're going to do a quote, you've now lost all of that. You might as well have not bothered. You feel guilty and probably a bit snappy because you know you've let someone down. And worst of all, they're going to phone you and see where you are, and you have to avoid that phone call because that's what you do.
And that just adds to all the stress and the overwhelm, and then we put even more things off. And I'm a great believer that if you're going to be late, you tell somebody before you're late. Because there's nothing more annoying, and we have this on our coaching calls, don't we, where somebody's like, I'm going to be late, and they're already 5 minutes late. If they'd have told me half an hour before they were due, I could have changed things around. But you've now told me when you're already 5 minutes late that you're now going to be another 10 minutes. That's far more irritating to anybody than if you say you've got an appointment at 11, I'm not going to make it till 15:15. You know that. You don't know that at 11 o'clock. You know that way before 11 o'clock. So if you were to phone them at 10:30, or even send a quick text, I'm really sorry, I'm running a little bit late. Is it okay if I come at 11:15? That's a different conversation from you've left it right till 11 o'clock and you're only just setting off. That's a different conversation. So sometimes I know we all avoid things when we don't want to face up to things. I do it too. I think we all do it. It's normal human behavior, isn't it? But planning your day and planning when these problems are going to occur is key here, isn't it? It's, thinking on a Monday, where are my clash points? Where are the problems going to come up? Where's the quality check needed on the new client? You can see most of that in your schedule ahead of time. Whereas if you just leave it all until the day of, that's when you're gonna, you'll be stuck in your car and you're like, oh no, I can't ring that client now. I've forgotten to connect to my phone to the car and I can't ring them, or whatever excuses you're giving yourself. I can't pull over. If you'd have thought about that ahead of time, that could have all been dealt with, even if it was scheduling a text message on an online system so that the text goes out at the right time. There's lots of clever tricks and tips to stop you getting quite so chaotic in your day, aren't there?
Do you know another thing? Another problem. So a lot of people are out cleaning because obviously someone's gone off sick, they've scheduled in too much. So we know there's more demand for most cleaners than most can fulfill. So all of us are overwhelmed, and a lot of people don't like to say no, so they keep taking on the work. So what often happens is recruitment's quite hard in this industry. So you lose a member of staff, or even two, right? And suddenly that's two people in your diary gone. And you cannot replace them just like that. There is at least a month's lag time probably on one of them. So you can't replace them. So I'm sat there, if this happened to me, I'm sat there going, oh, we have a problem. Okay, I've only got, let's say I've got 5 staff and I've just lost 1 or 2, or one's gone off sick, or whatever they've done. You're suddenly going, I can't deal with all these customers. I can't deal with them. So what a lot of business owners do is either they work themselves into the ground to get those customers done in the hope that they can recruit someone. But of course, they're probably far too stressed and busy to actually recruit someone. Or they start letting those customers down. Those customers feel like they're not important, and you lose potentially good customers. So the answer here, I know you would tell me this, Diane, is, okay, you can't do this work. Let's accept you can't do this work. Let's look at the overall amount of customers. shall we get rid of the ones? You've got to get rid of some. So let's pick the ones that you are going to get rid of that are either out of the area or they're difficult in some way or anything like that. Let's choose which ones we're getting rid of and give some of these good customers to existing staff. But it's kind of facing up to it quite early and making those horrific decisions, isn't it? Like, if you've got too much work, you're going to have to say no, or by ignoring it, you're saying no by default anyway.
And that putting off means that actually you're going to let the client down on the day rather than when you actually knew about it the Friday before, for example. You can see your schedule for the week ahead. You can see actually Thursday, we just can't do it. So you either start moving clients to other days, or like you say, you just go through your client list and go, you know what, if we can't service all of these customers going forward, who am I going to prioritize as the ones that we will service? And they're going to be your most profitable customers, the one where the geography works really well, where your staff or you enjoy cleaning their home, where they pay on time, etc., etc. Those are the ones that you're going to prioritize. Whereas if you leave it until the day, you might not be making the decision based on that. You might just be going, well, that one's, I can just text her, so that one gets that one out of the way. They might be one of your best customers that you're actually letting down. So if you make the decision early by planning ahead and thinking about where those problems are going to occur, you'll make better decisions, won't you?
Yeah, it's so hard though, because if you didn't like saying no in the first place, to do what we're saying is it's just horrific and brutal for most people. But, just listening to this, I think there'll probably be a few people that are like, that's me, that's me. And actually, I probably should face this. If that is you, please just face it. Please just it would take you 20 minutes to go, I'm going to say, look, you have to get rid of some customers. And this is like the most toxic words to most cleaning business owners. And you say it to them and you're like, you can't deliver it to them. I know you can't deliver it. You know you can't deliver it. What are you going to do? I'm going to recruit someone to solve this problem. Can we be realistic, Diane? How many times have people saved their business by recruiting their way out of it?
I can't think of a single instance, if I'm honest. Certainly not in that sort of timescale. So you're looking at next week's schedule and going, God, I can't fit that. I can't fit that 50 hours in because we've only got 40 hours of actual people time available. That's not a problem that gets solved in a week. Even if you did manage to desperation recruit somebody, they probably won't work out. They're not going to be able to deliver to the same standards as the rest of your team, and they need training, so they're going to need extra time. So you've not really solved the problem of that missing 10 hours because the person that you're going to recruit can't deliver that 10 hours. It's just not going to be possible to solve that problem in such a short space of time. Over time, you can recruit your way out of it, but that's over time, not an emergency.
Do you know the problem, the knock-on problem? You do that, you don't train them properly, you're thankful, you're so grateful they've got you out of a hole. What's the dynamics with them now in the team? Well, you owe them, basically. They've got a lot of power within that team. They haven't been trained, so they're cleaning however they, quite frankly, feel like it. You can't get rid of them because you're so desperate, you need them. And so we're in a lose situation here. You cannot grow a team on those shaky foundations. And since you still are probably not going to be able to say no, at no point are you going to get the breathing space to ever solve these problems unless you
still you're going to continue to recruit badly because you're desperate. And yeah, that's going to just perpetuate it, isn't it? And like you said, you still can't say no to clients, then you're going to continue building your business that way. And it's always going to be awful. It's always going to be so stressful. You're always going to have HR issues. You're going to be coming along. And, we get this in the DCBN where we need to help people where it's like, this has happened. They've gone off sick. What do I do? All these sort of different things. Now, I'm not telling you that won't happen, even if you recruit wisely, but it's more likely to happen if you recruit in desperation. And you'll also put up with things for so much longer when you're desperate. And that's the challenge that we have and we see this a lot, don't we, where somebody hasn't dealt with an issue that should have been dealt with 3 months ago, and now it's a massive issue, usually related to a team member that's suddenly now gone off on long-term sick with mental health problems, whereas actually they should never have passed their probation. And now you've got a problem that you've got to manage it completely differently than if you'd managed it really early doors when they were going off sick in their first week.
Or they've got a terrible attitude, they're turning everyone against you, and then they go off and steal your customers. And so you're left with not that member of staff and a bad reputation and a bad feeling. And actually, they probably did you a favour stealing your customers, if we're really honest.
bad apple just infects the whole barrel, doesn't it? So yeah, it's but we get it as well. We've probably hired in desperation over the years, and ended up with a bad apple in the barrel. It happens. But if you can look at these things coming along the tracks a little bit further ahead and actually plan instead of constantly firefighting, then it definitely helps.
This isn't about management. This is about managing your day. But again, it falls into if you have got a problem employee, if you dealt with it in the first place and you said, right, let's sit down and do a disciplinary, you've got a verbal warning, a written warning, and then we go to final warning. But what happens is we get to a point where they've probably conducted gross misconduct by the time you actually flag it up with us. And we're there, you're like, do you know, there's been this great big long story. And I'm like, and have you dealt with it at any point in that long story? No. And I'm like, oh, okay, they probably have committed gross misconduct. They've been with you quite a while. You're in a tricky situation here. Had you documented all of the way, had you faced it, had you spoken to them, had we had a meeting, had there been anything, you're in a really strong position. But as it is, you ignored it the entire way. And now what are you going to do? Sack them as a one-off. And you go, gosh, like, it's not ideal.
Yeah, you can be on scary, sort of shaky ground, can't you? And I know we did a masterclass on the disciplinary process, didn't we? And it sounded like, when I remember when I was planning it and kind of going, this is kind of the most boring presentation ever. But actually, because we did an interactive masterclass on it, we were talking about real life problems of what had happened. And I was kind of going, well, this is the process you follow. And the process when it comes to disciplinary was exactly the same for every single problem, whether it was somebody turning up late, whether it was somebody with a high absence, numbers. It was the same process for every single thing. And it was quite a quick process and quite an easy process to manage as well. We just simplified it all, didn't we? But if you follow that, then when it does get to the point where it's actually now a real problem, you've dealt with all those little problems and you're not coming along with, well, actually, it's been going on for quite some time, this. I just never faced up to it. I just ignored it because I was desperate. You've made a bigger problem. And I suppose that's the same with every single challenge in our business, isn't it? Ignore it at your pillow, at your peril, because further down the line, it's going to be a big problem.
Isn't it hard though? Because I think a lot of people come into being an accidental business owner. They grew their business, they're very successful, they've taken on staff, they treat their staff better because they've seen bad managers in the past. And they go, oh, I don't want to be like that. And then actually they end up being the worst imaginable manager it's like by not managing doesn't make you a good manager. Like you're just being nice, like by smiling and being nice no matter what, it just makes you an absent manager to a certain extent, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're just ignoring the problem. And actually that's going to make them feel unsupported. And if they do have a problem, they know you're not going to deal with it. So they're just going to leave rather than tell you about it.
So let's get back to planning your day then. So it's really deal with these things fast. And my best advice, and I say this so often on calls, please get rid of some of your customers. Like, can you not see that the reason you hate your business, the reason you are so stressed is you are dealing with customers that you hate anyway? And if you were to free up time with these customers that you don't like doing, that are not paying you enough, you can put the price up and get some good customers. But people are so terrified of saying no. And I do understand it because obviously this is their income. And the last thing you want to do is get rid of income you depend on. But it's like, okay, yes, you're going to suffer for probably only a month. It won't be very long. But it's going to pay off time and time again over the next few years.
Yeah, and I kind of like to give them a little bit of a security blanket and I kind of go, look, are you marketing? Are you generating new inquiries? Oh yeah, I'm turning people away. Okay, so the next one, you put them on your waiting list. You confirm the sale with them, confirm that you're going to start. Then you go to that customer that you don't like and you sack them. And then you've got somebody on the waiting list ready. So you've got a bit of a security blanket around that. It's the same when you put your prices up, isn't it? It's like if you've built up a bit of a waiting list at the new price, and then you go out to your current customers and put their price up, you've got a security blanket. You've got a waiting list there that you can just swap those clients out. It sounds brutal, but we're in business to make money and to look after our families. Yes, we're there to clean people's homes or offices, but we're also there to make money and look after our families. So sometimes you need to be as sort of brutal as that, don't you?
I think it's brutal to say no and I'm putting you on the waiting list. If the reality is it's going to push you over the edge to take them on, or if you're running already at 95, 96% capacity, I would not be taking on more work. Like I've got I'll tell you, I did a quote this morning and she wants the clean on Friday. And it's only a 4.5 hour clean. And we've got 5 hours capacity left on Friday. And I was like, there is no way I'm booking a 4.5 hour clean. So I spoke really candidly to the customer. And I said, look, if everything goes to plan, theoretically, we can do your clean on Friday. I said, but the reality is, if anyone calls in sick, you will be cancelled. You will be the first one. So can we just look at a date it's much more likely to happen? And we actually arranged a secondary date and I got 12 hours capacity on that day, in which case I could book her in. But, you know, it's being really proactive and really upfront with people and saying, yeah, I probably could, but it's probably not going to happen. So she already knows. And I'm like, look, you're not even going to get told till 8:30 in the morning. Do you want to accept that? Or do you want a guaranteed booking on Tuesday? A lot of business owners don't want to sort of say to customers, you know, this is the reality of where I'm at.
It's a bit like, that waiting list sort of idea is, we say to them, look, we won't be able to fit you in for a few weeks, but as soon as we've got some availability, I'll be in touch next week to confirm. And it just gives us that little bit of leeway to have a look and sort of see if there is room, but still sticking to our 90% capacity. And if there isn't, then they stay on the waiting list a little bit longer. And actually, you'd be surprised how long people stay on the waiting list nowadays compared to how long they used to stay on it a few years ago. They stay on it for months sometimes.
Do you know, when we were in COVID times, my waiting list got up to 90 people long and they were waiting 6 months. I mean, it was a tough, tough time, but like I've never had a 90-person long waiting. That's insanity.
Crazy. Yeah, I remember going out to our waiting list. We just sent out a text message to them all and just saying, we've got some capacity. If you're still looking, message back and I'll give you a call. And yeah, we got so many messages back, it was actually terrifying. And actually that was on the back of us having got rid of all our 2 hours fortnightly clients, and our minimum became 3 hours fortnightly because we were struggling so much with staffing. It's not kind of like that now. We don't have to take such drastic measures. Do you think also that there's an element here? So most of us are quite good at scheduling our cleaning team. Do you think there's an element here that we're not very good at scheduling our own time?
Yeah, definitely. I find it like a bit of a maths problem. So if I just think about a 2 hour slot this morning where like I had to be fair, my 2 hour slot did involve me having to walk the dog. But anyway, I had to go and do a quote, go and pick up some keys from an estate agent, go check on a clean and do 5 minutes cleaning, then drop the keys back and do a quote. And all of this was it was within 100 meters of each other. And it was like, right, let's pack it all in. And then I was looking at it and I was like, I'd looked at it yesterday and there was a clean that we're having a little bit of a problem with. And it was about 3 miles away. And I was like, oh, that's an absolute nightmare. That's a 20-minute journey each way. I'm really pushed on time. So I knew yesterday, I was like, look, I want this cleaning team on it because they're the least likely to cause me a problem. Send that one, because if we put anyone else, I haven't got time to check it. And it's that just predicting, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that is key. It's looking ahead and trying to plan your diary around that. I think also sometimes, and I like to talk about rocks in the diary, so things that have to be in my diary and can't get moved. And, the pebbles and the sand can fit around those, if that makes sense. There are certain things that, have to be done. Like, for instance, we have a DCBN afternoon on a Wednesday, don't we? And most of the time, that's an immovable rock. We might change it by half an hour, but we pretty much meet every Wednesday afternoon to do our recordings and have a catch up, don't we? So that's a rock in my diary that nothing else can get booked at that time unless we've agreed it in advance. So there are certain things that, like, for instance, you might be doing your payroll. So maybe you do that on a Thursday, for example. So you need to put that in your diary that it doesn't get moved. Invoicing. There's a lot of cleaning business owners that I've met over the years, and I was probably guilty of it in the early days, of not actually sending out the invoices because everything else was more important, probably more fun as well, but everything else was more important than actually sending out the invoices. And that's not the truth. It wasn't more important, but somehow that invoicing, I still haven't done it. It's the end of the month. It's now the 10th of the month, and I still haven't invoiced for last month. So there are things that should be in your diary all the time.
Do you know, Diane, my husband still teases me when he came on board and he took over some of the accounts. I had £5,500 outstanding.
Yeah.
And he was like, this is insane. Now they all paid and I trusted they'd all pay and it was great. It was like, and then, do you know the biggest problem with chasing that amount of money? Some were like, I don't owe it, because some of the invoices was for so long ago. They might have been 4 or 5 months ago that they'd missed one but carried on paying.
Yeah, we've had that. Yeah.
It gets really hard to then chase them. So yeah, invoicing is just essential, because there's nothing worse than not being paid for a clean that you know you did, they know you did, but you're like, can't keep arguing with them that they've got to pay for it.
invoicing, credit control, payroll, all these things are so essential to keep your business profitable and successful, but they're very easy to put off, especially as we don't normally like doing it. And we'd rather actually go out and do a clean
I
than do any of those things. And, we're all the same. I feel the same way, but they have to be done. They have to be immovable in my diary. Otherwise, the business doesn't get paid.
I speak to people and they always say, I think Diane likes these kind of things. And I'm like, I don't think she does. People think that you like doing like accounts and doing all these things. I'm like, she's actually quite fun when she's not doing these things.
Yeah, no, they're really genuinely not my favorite things to do. And actually, when I systemize my business and when I hire people to do certain things or outsource, I always do the things that I least like doing first, because they're the things that I'm going to put off doing. They're the things that I'll, mess about with or, move because I just don't like doing them. So guess what? The first thing was that I outsourced or hired somebody to do was the bookkeeping. I hate doing it. Doesn't mean I'm not good at it. And I'm quite good at setting up the system to do it, but then I don't want to be involved with it. I have somebody else that does it. So I always advocate systemizing and outsourcing or hiring somebody to do the things you hate first. It wasn't the cleaning that I outsourced first. I was rather clean than do my own invoicing. Absolutely.
Do you know what? So I'll tell everyone a conversation that Diane and I had. So we're putting in a new piece of software, right? That Diane has said to me, and we've reviewed it. And she said, Louise, we're going to use this software. And I'm totally on board with the software. And I was like, I'm going to spend like 2 or 3 weeks avoiding it until I can't avoid it anymore. And then what's going to happen is I'll set aside a Saturday where I'm going to have to do, probably it only needs an hour's work. But what I will do is avoid it the entire day, feeling guilty the entire day till 10 o'clock at night. And I will sit in bed and probably do it for 3 hours and actually quite enjoy it. But for an entire day and the 2 to 3 weeks before that, I will just feel a bit sick with myself that I haven't done it. And the worst thing is, I know I'm going to do this, and that's terrible, isn't it? And I'm like, but I know exactly when I will do it.
I think that's the thing here is, we suffer from all these sorts of challenges as well, don't we? And, if you don't like doing something, then you'll put it off. Or even actually, sometimes it could be one of the most important things in your business and it's waking you up at night. But still, for some reason, the next day, you can't bring yourself to do it. And we talked about, Brian Tracy and Eat That Frog. That's the frog that you just need to get out of the way first thing in the day. It doesn't mean I do this every day. It just means that I try and be self-aware that I've got a frog. And I keep letting it jump from day to day and it's stressing me out. If I just ate it and got it out of the way, the rest of the week will go so much better.
And I actually plan, so I live by my diary. So everything's automated, and anyone that wants to speak to me, you literally have to book in because it's so chock-a-block. But one of the things I now do for tasks that I don't want to do that are important, I have to put them in my diary. And I still will try my best to push them. But generally, if it's in my diary, it will probably happen that day, or I'm going to feel so guilty. Like I stop work generally by about 3:30 or 3 o'clock. And I know I can do 2 to 3 hours in the evening, which I will often do. And it won't even get done at the time it was planned in my actual bulk of the day. I will probably have to work that evening because I've avoided it in the day. I'm so bad at this, Diane.
But you know what? There's nothing wrong with that, and that's kind of normal because. But if it's a rock in your diary that you have to do that day, the trick is to not let it jump like the frog to the next day and the next day and the next day, because that's where the stress comes in, and actually that makes it worse because the more stressed and overwhelmed we are, the more likely we are to let it jump to the next day and the next day. And before you know it, 2 weeks have passed, you still haven't done your tax return, and it's now the 1st of January or whatever it is that you're putting off doing. We've all done that.
Yeah, it was the 28th of January this year for me.
Done. You didn't even do it. Gareth did it.
Was there. No, I had to look up every bank statement. It took me like 20 minutes. I was like, he might have pressed some of the buttons, but I was every part of that. And getting you on the phone and going, Diane, this isn't going quite to plan.
Yeah, but we all do that. I think it's just being aware of it really and trying to plan ahead so that it doesn't happen quite so often, because that's to me where the stress comes. If you can look at your schedule for next week and you can see there's some problems ahead, don't leave it until the day when it's probably become a bigger problem, because the problem's just not going to go away. It's only going to get worse. And if you've got too many staff members off, deal with it now. The customer will thank you because they've had 6 days notice that you need to move their clean, rather than they've tidied up the night before. You've not messaged them till they're at work at 10 o'clock. They might not have seen the message till the afternoon. Now they're thinking, oh, I've got to go home and do it because I've got some friends coming round tonight. So you've caused them some extra challenges. Whereas if you just contacted them on the Friday before and said, can we do it on Friday instead of Thursday? Then they can at least plan around it.
Say no, and they
Yeah, they
can
can
book
say
someone
no.
else.
Yeah,
Let them
exactly.
let them book someone else. You're not going to be able to do it anyway. Give them the chance to fix the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Rather than making it a short-term issue for them as well. So, yeah, I think for me, it's just trying not to be winging it quite so much and being quite so much of a firefighter. That is the key to not being out cleaning every day. But also, as I said, it's also a decision point that you're no longer available, but not everybody will be there yet. But when you are there, acknowledge it and put a line in the sand that I am no longer cover as the first option.
That's the first option.
You might be the last, it might still be an option, but not the first solution.
And accept that saying no, you can cancel customers. And actually, when you say not the first option, you're doing cover, the reality is the first option is telling the customer you can't do it. And otherwise, your only option is you cover. And I know that for me in the early days, that was just an absolute no-no. We had 100% attendance at all points. Actually, if I'm honest, our attendance is lower now. When we have more capacity, we actually could still hit 100% attendance, but sometimes we don't, and we actually would rather say to a customer, we'll do you tomorrow, because it's not worth the stress of finding another solution.
Yeah, I agree. And we've got a couple of clients where we go twice a week, and every now and then we only go once. It's just how it is. It's not, I always say this to my manager because she hates having to do that as the option. And for us, it usually is the last resort. But also, I always say, look, it's just cleaning. Nobody's going to die if you don't clean their house. They might not like it, but it's not going to be the end of the world. We're not surgeons.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes when people complain, I do think it is just cleaning. And can we be realistic? You made the mess, not me. But anyway, let's move on from that. That's for another podcast, isn't it?
Absolutely. Thanks, Louise.
Thank you, Diane. Bye bye.